So you're doing a remodel at home, you want to DIY this, and you want to learn a little bit more about how to run wiring. Well, today I built a mock half wall, and I'm going to show you a few tricks and tips that I learned over my career as a licensed electrician. My name's Jay, and I've been an electrician in the state of Washington for about 30 years. Started off doing residential, and now I am an industrial commercial electrician who has moved into doing more of a maintenance role as I'm getting in my ripe old age here. So let's get going on my tips and tricks for you and go over what we're going to use tool-wise, material-wise, and let's get after this. So this is your standard wall. These are 16 inches on center except for the last one, which is not a big deal. This is obviously a mock-up. This is not intended to be what's going to be represented in real life. You're going to have double studs every once in a while. You're going to have corners to go around. This is going to be a basic, simple, just single stud type scenario you'll see mostly in residential. You will have obstacles and challenges to get around, but this is more of a base level tutorial. First off, I would definitely recommend getting one of these. This is called a ship auger. It has a little screw tip point on it, which helps pull it into the wood. And the cutting blade is actually right here. This is a 7/8 ship auger. You can find these pretty much everywhere, every hardware store. The length on these, at least this one here, is about 17.5 inches long. And like I said, it's 7/8 diameter. We're gonna pair this ship auger up with a drill, hopefully a robust drill. This is gonna take, depending on what kind of wood you're getting into and how much you got to drill through, it will kind of strain your battery and your drill. So we'll chuck it up like that. Let's see what we can do. So what I usually do is I will take the drill and I will place it against my thigh. I'm right-handed, so I want to use my right hand on the trigger. You can also, of course, just switch it up to your left hand and right thigh here. But I'm going to go at it from the left thigh, and the reason I keep it in one spot is that way I get more consistent holes as far as height. Place that on the thigh. We're going to find our middle of the center of the stud, and we're just going to pull the trigger. And then we're going to back up, place that in the center, just like that. And if you need more, so you need more wires, go a little bit lower on your stud. Give yourself a little gap between the holes. What's nice about having this longer bit is that if you have, say, doubled up studs or tripled up studs, you can go at it from one direction, then you can turn around and go at it from the other direction and have those two holes meet. Now, drilling holes like this does take some practice, but I guarantee if you wired your own home and you drilled it out with one of these, by the time you were done, you'd be a professional hole driller. You'd have all the tips and tricks right up here. So let's get a closer look at what it looks like to drill these holes. What's your nose, buddy? Now, typically, you would already have your boxes already nailed to where you want them inside your walls, whether it's a switch or receptacle or whatever. I didn't do that here. I kind of just wanted to show the drilling technique first, but now we're going to install some boxes. And for boxes, I have a 4-square bracket box, and I have a cut-in box. I don't have any nail-on boxes. We're going to act like this box is a nail-on box. I'm going to screw it into the wall, screw it into the stud. Let's get after that. So there are many ways to lay out a house as far as your receptacle height and your switch height. One of those ways is to use a story pole. You just take a piece of scrap wood, and I put a mark here at 18 inches to center, and you have your center line and you have your V shape both directions. That means it's the center of your box. This would be the bottom of your box line there, and a slash that way. Top of box will be line there and slash that way, pointing toward the box, pointing toward the box, pointing toward the center of the box. I set this up for my receptacle height and my switch height, which is right there. Did the same thing. I think I used 44 on this just for example, 46 on top and 42 down below. Your typical box is going to be 4 inches in height. You can also use, of course, a tape measure and just measure each one off the floor to your desired height of whatever, center, bottom, top, it doesn't matter, as long as they're consistent. Now, back in the day, we used to use hammer. And the thing about it is that everybody had to use the same hammer or else these would be incorrect measurements. What you do is you'd put your hammer on the floor next to the stud, you put your box on top of it, and then you would leave the box there and then nail it in to the stud. That's a less accurate way of doing it, but when you're doing real quick production, it gets the job done. So we take our story pole and we put it on the ground or on your floor in your house, and you transfer this mark to here. That'll be our top of box. We'll go ahead and just draw that out a little bit and then put a slash going up, showing that the box goes here. Same thing for our switch box. We'll go ahead and we'll do it in the center this time. We'll transfer this mark off the story pole over to here, and then we'll go ahead and put it over here too so we can see it better. And then we'll say that that is center of box. Now on these metal 4 square boxes, you'll see they've got an arrow right there. That denotes the center of box. So what we'll do is we will take that center and line it up with our center mark. Make sure that the ears here are flush with the outside of the stud. And just for reasons of demonstration, I'm going to use a square drive screw and I'm going to run it right through here. One of the habits I've gotten into is I'll always put a ground pigtail in the box first. This time I didn't because I wanted to show it step by step. So you can find these at any hardware store, at least you should. They're a pigtail with screw, number 12 solid. So I usually do is take this guy and I'll bend a 90 right at the end there. And then I will take a square drive, number 2 square drive, and I'll go ahead and just put that screw in. If I don't do it now, you're going to be in a hurry and you're going to forget it and you're going to wonder why I didn't do that. And I try to get that to turn and stay facing the direction that I would prefer it, because eventually we're going to tuck this wire back like that and hook up the rest of our grounds to that. So for now, I'm just going to take my finger close to the box, roll it, and then roll that up inside, nice and tidy. Now for our receptacle box, this is, like I said, obviously this is a remodel box or a cut-in box as they're called. But I'm going to go ahead and just screw it in here and act like it's a nail-on box. I already pre-drilled some screw holes in here. So let's go ahead and get this mounted. Generally on a nail-in box, there will be some lines here that show how far out the box should be based on what kind of sheetrock or drywall you're using. We're just going to go and kind of guess where it should be. This is not for reals, so no big deal. And then since we have our mark pointing down and our level pointing over, we want the top of the box to be right at that level. Now it's time to pull our Romex. This is 12-2. It actually has 3 wires in it. It has a hot, neutral, and a ground, but it's called 12-2. Let's get after it. Now, one of the biggest mistakes I see DIYers make is they'll get their Romex home and they will just go ahead and cut it open. They'll grab that right out of the center and they'll pull on it and they'll run it across the room. And what happens is see all these curly cues. You pull it across the room and you start pulling this into a wall, the wire is going to twist. Just going to keep twisting and you're going to have some unsightly, not smooth wiring. I'm going to show you how to fix that. So instead, what you're going to do is you're going to find the end and you're going to take your hand here and hand here, and you're going to pull up, pull up, pull up, and you're going to keep doing this over and over again until your hands are full, or maybe you don't need that much Romex, but we're going to go ahead and kind of do about that. Then you're going to take it like this so that that is going down. Then you want to unroll it all the way to the end so it's flat. You'll see some curly cues down there, but we unrolled this hand over hand, so we know that even though there's some circles in there, it's actually a flat circle. So we're going to pretend there's actually something coming from this direction over here. I'm going to run this through, and what you can do too is you can keep running it through, say over to your switch. And you can flatten this stuff out as you go. We'll do about like that there. So once we get here and we've formed our nice sweeping 90 on the Romex here, and we got to make sure we have enough wire here. I like to use usually like 10 inches to 12 inches coming out. I know it sounds a little excessive, but I like to have more wire than not enough wire. Down inside this box, you'll see knockouts here. These are half inch, half inch, half inch, but it also has a little moon shape here. You can bust that out to a 3/4 inch. This is called a combination box. At least it is where I'm from. What we're going to do is we're going to take a pair of pliers and we're going to knock out this knockout right here. Now I'm going to use what I call a 2-screw connector. This is a 1/2 inch Romex connector, clamp style. We'll pull this lock nut off. Put the male part up inside the box here and screw down this. What I like to do is get the lock nut fairly tight on top and have this 2-screw a little bit off center. And I'll take my pliers, put it on there, and I will tighten it up so the screws are facing out towards me. That's good and snug. You don't want to go too hard on that because you can actually just snap this thing. And if you want to, you can take your screwdriver. In the apprenticeship, they always said this is not a hammer. But if it's not a hammer, why is it shaped like one? You take your screwdriver, you put it against one of the little ribs there, and you tap on it. And that'll tighten up that lock nut. Take your Romex and make sure there's a little bit of insulation that's going to be sticking outside of your connector here. Mark it with your thumb. Take your strippers and gently kind of cut that insulation with the cutters and then pull it off. Some guys and gals like to run the Romex into the box first, then take a razor knife and cut it like that. I prefer to do it this way. It gives me more control. I get a tighter fit as far as I can choose exactly how much insulation I want up inside there. Grab that paper jacket, peel it back, and just tear it off. Push. You'll see on the ground here, you have a paper jacket too. You can either pull or you can push that down so it gathers up like that. It'll fall off, grab it, snap it off. Form your Romex flat and run it right up inside the connector. Reach in, grab it, pull it through. Get that Romex jacket sheath where you want it. And then we'll go ahead and tighten this up. Now you want it snug, but not too snug. What we can do is just kind of do a pull test and see, okay, that's not going to go anywhere. Flatten out your Romex in the center of the stud space here. Take a Romex staple, put it around your wire. And staple that in. Now you can consult your local rules and regulations, but there is a spacing you should have. I think some people say it's within 6 inches of a box. I've noticed inspectors really aren't that particular about it as long as it is secure. I wouldn't put it way down here. but you could put it probably right about there. I'm just kind of doing this for demonstration. Now, what about this box? We pulled right past it. What are we going to do? Well, since we already have our Romex hanging out there, we can just grab this, pull this side down to where we need it, pull this side over to here. Now we have a loop. So we can go ahead and figure out where we want to strip them back to. We can take our cutters or strippers, cut it there, where we have our thumb mark right there. Take it, strip that, come down here, strip that, push that paper back, push that back, pull off our paper. You can take either a screwdriver or your strippers, come back and knock the little knockout grip on the back of your box, kind of push that forward, and then take your Romex, push it up and out, get that flat, push it in there, reach in and pull it out while you're working that flat Romex in there. And then go ahead and push that against the stud in the center. Grab your other one, push it up, drop it inside, reach in, kind of push back so you can work that through. And now we're good to go there. Bring this over, stack them on top of each other. We'll flatten that out. Grab our staple and we'll nail that in. Good to go. So now you've got your wires inside the box. What I like to do is keep them flat. This is the same way this wire is coming, this Romex is coming in right now. It has the neutral on the right, ground in the middle, and your hot on the left. This one here, let's put that ground back where it should be. And this one is doing the same thing. What we're going to do is we're going to pull that hot, that neutral, this neutral, and this hot. Take your finger and push that ground to the back of the box. Take your other one and push it over so that they're coming out the same length or same angle, I should say. And you can do this a million different ways practically. You can do them all at the same time. You can do them one by one. Let's just go ahead and pick away here. Okay, let's just go ahead and we'll do black. And we'll do neutral. Now here's time to make a decision. You can either run your receptacle here and you can put your neutrals on one side, your hots on the other, and we're going to pigtail these grounds together. Or what I like to do is you pigtail out the neutral, you pigtail out the hot, and you pigtail out the ground. And the way I see it is if you run, let's say, a neutral to that screw and a neutral to that screw, you're relying on this little piece of metal here to carry from one receptacle to this receptacle and down to the next receptacle. I would rather have my wires pigtailed in here so that it only powers just this receptacle, and the connection between these two, the pigtail, runs it down to the next. So now that we have our wires all tucked back in the back of the box, we'll come out about 6 inches from the back. And some guys will do this with their hand from the back of the box to their thumb and go right there. Some guys will do a fist right there. After a while, you just kind of get an idea of where it should be. That's about where I think it should be. So we're going to cut all these off right there. And then we're going to strip these out. This is something that I just do at this point. I don't really measure how much I'm stripping off. I'll just eyeball it and go from there. They don't all have to be exactly the same length, but let's see how good I did, just guessing. Yeah, it's just all guesswork right there, and it turned out pretty close. And then we'll take our pieces of just loose wires here, strip those out. And we'll start with the ground wire that tucked back over there. Take this wire in this hand and the two that are coming out of the box. And what you want to do is, if you get them even and then give them a slight bend, they'll stay right where they need to be. Lay that pigtail wire in, kind of put them in a little triangle shape there, and then take your wire nut. I don't like to use any type of wire nut tool, like a drill wire nut installing tool, if that makes sense. I like to get a feel with my actual hands of how much torque I'm putting on it. So again, we'll get those even, kind of put a slight bend in it, and get the right side of the wire here. I didn't strip that one out. Oh, let's strip this one out. All right. Get that slight bend so that the wires are even at the end. I'll lay this one on there, kind of put it in a little triangle shape. Make sure that and sometimes if you want to, you can take the back side of your wire nut and just kind of push it to flatten them out. Pro tip, in a pinch, if you're ever in a noisy environment, you can take these red wire nuts, because they're smooth, you can put them in your ears. I don't suggest doing that, but it does work in a pinch. All right, on to the black wire here. Same thing, we'll get those even on the end, push them together with our thumb, put them in that triangle shape, and then run that wire nut on there. And you can do this if you want to, but you can take your wire and then give it a tug. You can grab each wire and give it a tug. It's not going to go anywhere. So I got all my pigtails on. Everything's nice and snug and secure. There's a few different ways to do this. You can either take the whole group and you come out about 2 fingers and you push them all over, and you can roll them in the back. What I like to do is take one set at a time. It's a little bit easier. So I'll grab this about 2 inches out, roll that wire nut in, and then roll that up. Same thing with the neutral, and same thing with the ground. This is not as clean as I usually would do it. I'll take these wires, group them all together, and then push that in. Here's something you should not do, that we used to do back in the day, is you take the butt side of your hammer and you can push those wires back. Of course, never do that. Never, ever. Okay, now that we've got everything done, rolled back in the box, we can pick a spot about 6 inches, cut those off, and then you can roll those up into your box. And after they sheetrock or put drywall and they run their tool in here and they cut your wires, you can pull your wires out and fix them. Or you can just trust your local drywaller to do a good job. All right, let's say it's time to come over here to the switch. Now I added a wire here. We're going to pretend this wire here is the one going up to a light fixture or a row of light fixtures. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take and leave this. I'm going to pull the neutral and hot up out of the way. I'm going to pull this neutral and hot out of the way, roll my ground wire out, tuck that back. Now you can see, if I were to go ahead and just do this and cut this ground wire right here with the wire coming up the bottom here, that wire would only be that long. It wouldn't be very long at all. So what I'm going to do is come up with this one to the back of the box, fold that back down, and then run it out to the end of that ground. You can now see how much more wire we have available if we need it. So again, I'm going to roll that to the top, tuck that in, tuck that down on the bottom. And this one here, I'm going to go ahead and just roll this and tuck it down at the bottom like that. Now that we have all of our grounds together, I'm going to cut that off. I'm going to grab a piece of copper, number 12 here, get these all even, bend them over a little bit, line up my other ground wire, make sure all the ends are together, and then go ahead and twist that wire nut on. Now you take your neutral, run that to the top as well, and then back down. You can roll this over to this side. It doesn't really matter. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and roll this one over to this side, and then we'll run this one over there like that, tuck that down. Now, here's a code. I'm trying to think. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think nowadays switch boxes require a neutral because of all the new technology coming out. Some of the devices need a neutral. So I'm going to go ahead and just pretend that this is just your standard non-smart system and just go ahead and cut these. And because it's a switch, your standard single pole toggle switch, you don't need a neutral for it, but at least you have the neutral in the box in case you need to add something later down the road. So these guys are just going straight together. And we'll tuck that in the back of the box. We'll tuck this in the back of the box. Fold that down. All right, so now we have what's called our hot wire, and the one going to the light is called a switch leg. Now, what you can do is a couple different things. You can either just take these and twist them together, or before you do that, you can either say, okay, this is my hot wire, this is my switch leg. So what I can do with my switch leg is I can take my pliers and I'll just put a little crimp there. I'm not sure you can see that crimp I put on there, not very good lighting. But when I go to pull this out after they sheetrock, or you sheetrock, you can pull this out and you can know which one the switch leg is, which one the hot wire is. Alternatively, let's go ahead and just twist these together. I put, like 3 or 4 twists in it, fold that back. And then cut them to match. And I'll cut that ground too. Oopsie. So I'll fold this back. Of course, I'll put a mud ring on it. So now say it's trim time, and I go ahead and I reach in here and I unroll these. Well, because I have this notch right here, I know that is my switch leg and this is the hot. Alternatively, what you can do is just take a wire nut and put it on the hot. That way, when you roll this out, you'll know the capped wire is the hot wire. It doesn't really matter too much on a single pole switch. I just like to do it out of just kind of habit. I'll usually just do the little crimp thing. I'll roll this into the box, and now our wall is ready for drywall. So today we used the following tools. We used a drill with a ship auger bit. We used an impact. We used a hammer, screwdriver, strippers, linesman, and for material, we used 12-2 Romex, a 4-square box, a single gang mud ring, a nail-on box, some Romex staples, and some wire nuts. Oh, and a grounding pigtail. That's about it, I think. If this stuff helps you get rid of that anxiety of doing your own work based on our little model setup here, I plan on doing more in the future. So stick around, please like, please subscribe. And if you got any questions or comments, leave them in the comments. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.